This is the Yay. I'm Reg Clay.
And Norman G.
This is the Yay, where we talk about life in the theater and the theater of life.
Yay!
As always, we want to thank Central Works for sponsoring the Yay. Central Works, a new play theater headed up by Gary Graves and Jan Leifler. Central Works, reinventing theater one play at a time. We want to thank Central Works for sponsoring the Yay, and we also want to thank our wonderful consulting producer, Mallory Samara. I have to find it on my, I've got my little, I've got my laptop here and I got my desktop here, and I have to just find it. So yes, thank you,
and we need
Mallory.
to add one other thing is, and
Yes.
that is acknowledging that this is taking place on Chochenyo land. That this is the native people who were here, and I don't know how much they agreed to us being here, but here we are. And
yeah, that's right.
Their existence, their continuing existence. I actually live near the Native American Health Center. They are here.
Yeah, that's right. I want to introduce our wonderful guest, Carolina Morones. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I was just speaking off mic that it's a small world. You work with me on Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and you work with Norman on As You Like It.
Yeah. That's right.
No, I just thought she was a little sister, and then I started hearing more about her. And I was like, oh, this is the powerhouse family.
Yeah, we both come in hitting, throwing them punches.
Is
and
that
he's
right?
referring to my sister Regina Moronis. Yeah.
Oh, shucks. We should have had her on too. We've had a couple of sisters on.
Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah. We
can always find time.
Yeah. We had the Capozis. As a matter of fact, Gianna Capozzi.
Oh, yeah.
She was 16 when we had her on 2 years ago. Now she's 18, really slimmed up. I mean, the Capone sisters are just knockouts. And we also had, also on Women on the Verge, the Viramontes sisters.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we should definitely do that. In any case, as I begin our podcast, how was your week, Norman?
I don't know what happened this week. It just went by.
Like a bullet.
No, I didn't have, started off where I had a fairly empty calendar, and then things just kept popping up. So I don't know. It's, ready for school to be over and not quite there.
Yeah. Are you still doing rehearsals for a playground?
Technically, yes, but there are not very many rehearsals because this is, these are all very short pieces. So we had one rehearsal beginning of the week. We have a rehearsal on Sunday, and then we start in tech next week. So it's coming. And in fact, if I'm a good boy, I will actually send out, check in with my tech staff this weekend and start talking about what we need. Fortunately, we don't need much.
Yeah, you're one of those directors, and actually, you're one of the better of the directors that don't drill the actors over and over again. A lot of directors are sort of like drill sergeants, like let's run it again, let's do a run through, and just to get it in the system. And sometimes the actors are like, I'm fatigued. Can I have a day off so I can rest?
Yeah, well, you just don't want it to be. You don't want them to get to a performance that's just rote. So you want to give them some space to keep it fresh. The stuff that you're learning and discovering, you want to repeat that so that you make sure that gets in that muscle memory and that emotional memory. But beyond that, you really need to give them some space.
Yeah. Carolina, have you ever directed before?
I've done a lot of movement directing. For example, in the before COVID time, BC, early 2020, I actually was the movement director for Retablos at Word for Word at Z-Space. And so I had the great opportunity to working with that team on the movement and choreography on that performance piece that we did by Octavio Solis.
Oh,
very, very nice.
What's the piece?
It's called Retablos.
Oh, Retablos. Yes, his book.
Yes.
You worked on that?
Yes, I was the choreographer.
Is that Word for Word?
Yeah, Word for Word. Movement director on that. Yeah. So my more of directing kind of focus has been more on choreography and movement because I love it. I love creating the world of a piece and how folks interact with each other. So that's where I really sit on that.
Yeah, we'll talk more on that. There have been a couple of current events, not a lot. I do wonder, okay, Bill and Melinda Gates, why do we care? I mean, why is that news? I mean, okay, a multi-billionaire
because he's one of the richest people on the planet.
Yeah, and Okay, so they've broken up.
But yeah, why do we care about them breaking up? Where's that money going to go? That's what the community is wanting to know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same thing with the business. Everyone's wondering about if there was a prenuptial agreement, and now there's news that Bill Gates may have been messing around with maybe hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
And so that's a brick in the air. Demi Lovato has come out as non-binary. That was a big news for. I think they are a big star for the millennials. So I think that's a good thing for for that community. Yeah, exactly. The Greater Idaho Movement. I don't know if you heard about this, but I guess there's some folks in Idaho who wants to expand Idaho to encompass 75% of Oregon and Northern California. I think it's a bit crazy. I mean, people wanting to redirect the states or whatever. So there's that. Also, okay, so this is something that maybe we can talk about. An 11-year-old fights off a sex predator in Florida. And apparently this 11-year, I don't know if either of you heard about this.
I think I saw something flash on like social media real quickly about it.
Yeah, apparently this, I guess, a sex predator had been targeting this 11-year-old and had been following her as her mother drops her off to the bus stop. And the guy gets out, tries to grab at her. She fights the guy off. The guy runs back to his car. And the girl credits watching Law and Order SVU as, I guess, motivation for her fighting it off. So it's a good story, but it's creepy people are out there. It's just, yeah. So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the only other thing that I had as far as news is concerned that happened this week, in Texas, they've passed yet another abortion banning law.
Yeah.
For women 6 weeks and over. They're not allowed to have an abortion, which I think is absolutely horrible. There's a group called Jane's Due Process, and they are actually helping ladies and girls legally so that they can successfully get an abortion. I just think it's really, really toxic. One thing
it's weird. We're in this period where they're just, and hopefully it's the last gasp of this sort of right wing, extremist side of the Republican Party, that they're just saying, wow, well, we're in party, we better try and do everything that we can, one, to hold on to power, but also all our little pet projects, the things that people vote for. People show up to vote when abortion is on the ballot. So those issues, they're making sure they jump on that before, because there's talk that they may lose 2022.
You mean the Republicans?
The Republicans, if they can't come up with something to offer voters right now, all they're doing is coming up with all the scare issues. Yeah, making sure they keep that fresh.
Yeah,
but if they don't have something positive, I don't know that they're going to gain much.
Yeah.
In 2022.
Carolina, here's a question for you. As a woman, do you feel, because we have, when Amy Coney Barrett took over for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that shook a shockwave, throughout, I'm sure throughout most of women in America, because Roe v. Wade is the Supreme Court is going to vote on that. Do you worry about that? Maybe not for yourself, but just, as a woman, do you feel that your rights maybe is in jeopardy of being taken away?
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely that in jeopardy. I think I've always landed on the side of, like Norm, like you're saying, these are hot topics. People get really enraged about them. There's like, either you're on this side, or you're that side, you're this, But what I really like to talk about is education and support. People want to say, don't do this, don't do that. But yet, where is the support for families? When you have a child, is there a community coming together to help you in healthcare, to help you raise that child with great education? And that's where I think it gets very funny. People want to say you should not do this, or you shouldn't do this, or control your bodies in this way. And yet, where is the support? Yeah. Are they stepping forward to say, hey, let's improve healthcare, social services, education, so that your children, the ones we want you to have the support? And that's where I'm like, I don't buy it, And so I think that there is a danger to being just an issues and people voting on hot topics and not focusing on the ramifications of the full community. How are people cared for? How are people served? How do we serve each other? And that's what's missing in this conversation, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the irony of the Republican Party. I'm sure that there are good moderate Republicans, but a lot of the Republicans are, they care about life until you have life. And then afterwards, like defunding public school systems and, taking away the welfare and the public benefits that, a lot of young mothers need. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's the mother of all ironies or hypocrisies for me.
Yeah. See, I could care. I don't really care if you're a person who says that shouldn't happen for a moral, spiritual, religious reason. But when you start to infringe on other people's abilities to make their own choices, as well as like if you really want people to change their mind or live differently than you what they think, then you should be investing in whole communities, not just one topic, not just one issue. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the danger of this.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and well said, and well spoken. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm reminded when these issues happen, the privilege that I have as a man. I mean, there are a lot of black men who don't have a lot of privilege. Matter of fact, this week I didn't mention it because we mention it all the time. But yet another, there have been a couple of black men who were killed, or video
There
has
was
been
that
released.
one videotape from 2 years ago. And
Exactly.
they
Wow.
claimed the guy died in an auto accident. They claimed he died, but now all the videotape shows that they beat him to death.
Yeah, right,
Wow.
exactly. And of course, it took activism to get those videos to be released. But I'm still privileged as a man because I don't have to worry about things like abortion or Planned Parenthood, being taken away, or the fact that, if you're a 16, 17-year-old woman in California, you're more freer than you are in Alabama, because in Alabama, there might not be a public Planned Parenthood
Yeah.
as
Right.
there is in California. So in any case, yeah, so that's the current events. There were
Well,
two other,
one
go
other
ahead.
thing on that though, one of the reasons people are paying attention to Bill and Melinda is
Mm.
because the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is huge. So what's going to happen to that?
Yeah,
That's one of the big questions is when they split, are they going to split that up? I bet they will. And that means who's going to be giving away money? Because, yay for Bezos' ex, who was like immediately, hey, I'm giving away money. Here you go.
yeah. So we'll see. And it sounds like Melinda still has an activist or philanthropist vibe in her. I don't know if it was more Bill or Melinda, but it sounds like it's more Melinda. So we'll see. There are two other, before we jump into an origin story, we have a couple of Bay Area folks who are doing really, really well. Tamika White, we both know her. She is in Utah. She's actually, I saw a post, she is acting with the Salt Lake Acting Company, doing her debut. I'm so glad that Tamika's doing well. This is
Wow.
a little thing on her.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm glad that Tamika, we try to uplift artists who began in the Bay Area, but are doing other things. Also, Taryn Smith, he
Huh.
was in a movie, Central Command, and Central
Nice.
Command is doing great things. I think they're up for a Cannes Film Festival award. So
Yeah.
Bay
Mm.
Area actors, if for those who are listening, for those young actors who are like, hey, can I really, really make it out of the Bay and do great things? Yes, you can. You totally can. Online, so Sylvia and Amorino Gonzalez says it's just a word of caution as theater and music groups are beginning to reopen after COVID closures. I'm seeing lots of audiences, audition calls, and job offers, but still talk of them being paid by stipend or honorarium.
Oh,
What
yes.
about
All
AB5
that.
folks? Yeah. Is anyone going to be following that? Be careful. The bill came out just as we were closing down, so was not fully understood by everyone. But it has not gone away. I don't like it, but will follow it because it is the law for now. And from what I can see behind the scenes, sadly, it is not going away.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's not. It's not going away.
Yeah.
And this is the whole diversity, equity, inclusivity conversation that's been going on. The sort of other side effect is the word I'm looking for. The side effect is everybody is going to be lifted up by us saying, wow, there's some bad things that were just a part of the way the system used to work. And now we're going to say that's not okay. I personally hate AB5, but I love that it's going to make people producing stuff stop and think, what am I doing? And is it legal?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the conversation that we had before COVID-19 about AB5, because I think it was Sylvia Creighton's who came on the A to talk about this. You have to make a distinction between the groups that have a lot of money, but are not, paying employees or actors what they should. And the little, startup groups, I mean, there are companies that just start up just to do one production and then they're gone. And they don't have a lot of money and they should not be penalized. I think there needs to be a distinction between those.
Well, yeah, that's why I don't like AB5, because I feel like AB5 lumped everybody together. And then the folks that we were actually after, Uber.
Yeah.
Those folks they got off the hook. So we independent contractors are struggling.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Carolina, do you feel as an artist, do you find that companies compensate you properly, or do you have to get into a difficult discussion as to how much you're worth?
Yeah, I think I often have a difficult discussion, especially with myself, in terms of how much I'm valued in these systems. I do think that is a good result, like Norm was saying, with this law, that some of the smaller companies have had to start to reorganize the way they do the stipends. I think the way they're going around it is if they're considered a hobbyist, or like there's like a kind of, it's not a full production. I'm not exactly sure, but there's still some that do it that way. I think after this law, I've seen much more increases in and transparency in hourly fee. Like we are going to work with you for this amount of hours and this is how much it is per hour, versus I'm just going to throw, $50, $100, $150, $200 towards you. I think the other thing that illuminates is that producers often get a budget and they're told, all right, see what you could get with these actors. You have to pay these actors more and these actors will take less. Go ahead and work it out. And it's not any kind of formula. It's just like, I know Norm is going to take $500. Carolina is going to go okay to $300, or not challenge me on $300. So now you have people getting paid all different types of stipends that doesn't make sense at all. It's just based on who is going to fight for it more, So it's very frustrating, because being someone who went to university, then have a master's degree and is in debt for that, for theater, and then being undervalued, sometimes I'm paid appropriately, sometimes I'm not. It's really challenging when you have that kind of weight on you, you know what I mean? And so it's a struggle. It's a struggle for sure. And I've gotten to the point where I've started to kind of say, okay, what is it that I can do? What is it that who are the people I want to work with? I might take less for that because I really want that experience, or all right, I'm going to step away from that and really prioritize my time. So unfortunately, that's how I have to go about it.
Yeah, and I know from you, Norman, just as we've always talked, usually before you even go into an audition, you'll check the budget. You'll check to see, well, I mean, if it's equity, they're going to call you, but you'll see, what their budget is. Like, I remember there was a production that you were debating whether you would take the role, and you were gauging what their budget was and what the roles were for that particular budget. But you equate that. You're not just an actor who's like, oh, I want to be cast. And
I very much am. I am that, but a lot of organizations that try to have conversations with me go, oh wait, you're equity. Okay, hold on. And then they come back at you. And and I really, I will put this out there publicly. I would happily work with Anton's Well, Robert Estes, for next to nothing. I love that company. I love their work. I also know that he has very little money, and in order for us to find a project together, I've got to work with him. I'm happy to do that. Where I take issue is that company that is pumping out shows on a shoestring budget, but somehow they've got the money to pay for this and pay for that and pay for everything else, but they don't want to pay the talent, or they don't want to pay as much. Yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am not available for that. I can stay home. I just saw last night Fat Ham.
Where's that being played at?
What's that?
No, I was asking, where's that being played at?
It's streaming on demand, and it's actually only, I think, through this weekend technically, and then it's gone, because it was a production that they put together, and it is twisted. It is hard to describe. Black Hamlet at a barbecue.
Okay.
It's amazing. And what I love about it more than anything is it's exactly what I want to see from local theater. Don't just do another tired production of Hamlet. Actually do something with it. Think about the people you're working with. don't go to the trouble to cast a diverse cast and not expect that the audience is going to wonder why that black dude is with that Asian chick. You know, if you want to just put it in their face and go, oh, this is the way it is, that's fine. But do you have an opportunity to say, maybe that's part of the friction of the play? Because there is, like we talked a lot afterwards about Ophelia. There's a lot of friction in that play, and Shakespeare doesn't help you out. Ophelia is the little girl who might be in love with Hamlet and then is not understanding what's going on with him and then is driven crazy and then dies. You don't really, how do you fill that story out? The way you do it is by saying, oh, well, I'm casting these people. One of the ways to approach it is I'm casting these people. I'm going to tell this story here. This is how we're going to do it. So I don't want to see a production of Fat Ham here. They did it. It's there. You can actually find it on film. Do something else. Do something here with that kind of energy. And I love companies that are thinking that way. But, you know, but at the end of the day, if you've got a budget, you've got to pay your talent. You have to.
Yeah, exactly. That it is. Let's get into an origin story. Carolina, where were you born and raised, and how did you get involved in theater?
Well, I was born in San Francisco.
Right on.
Yay. And I was raised in Oakland. So I'm from the town. I'm from here. And it's really fun. My mom is from Nicaragua and immigrated in, I think, 1960 to San Francisco. So they were longtime San Franciscans. And then when I came along, moved to Oakland because, you know, the Bay Area has gone through its cycles of price rentals going up in San Francisco and then folks moving to Oakland and, you know, all of that stuff. And as we continue gentrification now. But yeah, that's basically, I'm from here. I grew up here in Oakland. I started in theater here. I remember there was a small theater company. My mom would take us. It was on Fairfax and I want to say 55th and Fairfax, somewhere over there by off of not too far from High Street, called Egypt. And it was a small Black community theater company there. And when I was like in second, third grade, that was my first experience with.
I just drove by there.
Yes, yeah.
You're part of Egypt.
Yes.
I actually went to their closing when they were having to get everything out of there.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I was a kid, that was one of the first theater experiences I had. And then moving into in high school into the Oakland Ensemble Theater when we had the Equity Theater Company out of the Alice Art Center. And that was another really amazing experience. So those were kind of my two foundational theater experiences, were like deeply rooted in Oakland in these two amazing Black theater companies that were like, come, you know, do theater with us and like, and not pushing folks away, but like bringing people in.
And I'm sorry, say again, what was the second one?
The Oakland Ensemble Theater.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
It's really
so again, that would have been right before they disappeared.
Exactly.
Wow.
It was. I think it was like, I started with them in 98, I think it was. And I think they probably closed more like around 2003 or 2004, around that time.
Yeah, no, I'm not even sure it was that far because I also worked with them around then.
Okay, we might have crossed paths. We might have
kind of did. No, it was those are crazy times. They could barely keep the office. They had an office for free. They had office space for free, but they could barely keep the phone on and keep the office staffed. It was a trip.
Yeah, I was like a high school student helping them keep it open.
Oh goodness! And that was during the time of the Enron crisis, so I'm sure they had a hard time keeping the electricity on too. But it's cool that your parents actually went to. Your parents were theater goers, and not just like the expensive theater, but like local theater. They supported local theater, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I think more my mom. My dad wasn't into it like that, you know. He was more like, let's go to the horse track, you know, over there off of Emeryville, and let's go, you know, watch a rodeo. That was more what he was into, you know. While my mom, growing up in the Mission District in San Francisco, they always did folkloric dance. They did Nicaraguan, like, you know, indigenous dancing, and she grew up doing that, you know, singing in choirs and dancing, and so she wanted that same exposure for us. And so when she saw that there was a theater company only like 3 blocks away from where we were living at that time, she was like, yep, let's put you in there. And we got to, you know, do little shows and dancing and all kinds of stuff that was a lot of fun.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And it sounds like your sister. Do you have other siblings other than your sister?
Yeah, I'm one of five actually. So my sister Regina and I, we both really gravitated towards theater and dance. And my sister Vanessa actually is studied photojournalism and continues taking photos today, but now works talking about close to Norm at the Native American Health Clinic. So she works there
Oh, nice.
at Native Health, yeah. And my sister Leslie is in the East Coast, actually, New Jersey, and she was studying finance, and she's over there working, American Express on Wall Street type of a thing. So, but she was a poet coming up, so we were all in the arts, but she decided to go and pursue that financial kind of career. And I have a brother who just shut down. Well, he's selling it. It's the Oakland Fight Camp on Park Boulevard. He has a
Oh,
boxing. He's into boxing and martial arts. Grew up that way and had his own boxing gym. Over the last 3-4 years, COVID hit. It was just really hard. So now he's moving to Texas. He's decided to move his family down there and sell the Oakland Fight Camp.
Wow, wow, what a diverse family.
Texas. Why Texas?
The land is cheap, I think.
Hey.
A lot of folks, I mean, that's where Craig Dickerson is, and that's where Travis Bedard and Bob Zook, we had them on. And well, actually, Travis, he went to Texas. So Texas is recruiting. I'll never do it. You have to put a gun to my head to go to Texas, only because of the politics. And well,
Yeah.
I was born there, but I'd have no memory of it. But no, it is happening, and we've talked about the migration. Everyone is sort of leaving California. A lot of folks are leaving California.
Yeah, it's just
Mm.
really expensive. And like I do worry about his family because his wife is Chinese and he's Nicaraguan Mexican like myself. And so their children, they have 2 children, are mixed, in a time where it's really harsh on both Latinx community in the, Texas border areas and Chinese folks. So I pray for them.
Yeah, exactly. So when did you realize that this was going to be your thing? This was going to be not just a passing fancy, but theater was something, it is a part of you.
Yeah, I think it was working with OET that I got, like they say, the theater bug. When I was a kid, it wasn't as big of a deal, but when I got older, it just really felt like the first time I could express what was going on inside. And growing up where I did in East Oakland, sometimes we were experiencing a lot of harsh realities, and it didn't feel like I could express what I was really feeling, or thinking, or to be validated as a human being that had a full story. And I felt like theater, the way we did it then, was that opportunity for me to write, for me to get on stage, for that kind of validation. And so when I went to college, actually working with Aldo Billingsley, because he came over to OET and was like a board member. So this is really funny because this is so deep Oakland theater Bay Area stuff. But Aldo was working at Santa Clara University and had just started working there, I think, from from Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so he was one of the ones that recruited me to go to Santa Clara, and that really cemented it for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You were in Santa Clara. That's cool.
Yeah, and I got to work with him, and he was just such an inspiration, which is funny enough because years later, after grad school, I ended up working for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for about 7 seasons, and I got to work with him a few times as well. So it was really cool. It's like everything goes full circle.
Very, very nice. I see also did you spend some time in Detroit? I see former actor Shakespeare in Detroit.
I did. So that was another Oregon Shakespeare Festival connection. There was the artistic director, Sam White, wonderful, wonderful person, has the theater company Shakespeare in Detroit. She was doing a fellowship in Oregon when I was still working there. Around 2018, I decided to move back to the Bay Area. I was just missing my family. I had been in Ohio for 3 years, and then I was in Oregon for 6-7 years. So it'd been almost 10 years that I was away from the Bay Area. And coming back to the Bay, Sam was doing Much Ado para Nada. So they were doing a bilingual version of Much Ado for Nothing, about nothing. And so I went ahead and auditioned, and then I got to fly out there and work with them.
Wow, really, really, really cool. And yeah, if you came back in 2018, that means when we were on stage for Women on the Verge, you had really, I mean, it had barely been a year since you had been
That's
back to the
right.
Bay. Wow.
Yeah, I kind of hit the ground running. I just was like, all right, Dawn Monique Williams was another person I met at OSF, and I saw she was directing the show, and I was like, I want to be in a show you direct, so let's do it, you know?
Nice.
And I auditioned for that. Yeah. And I also got to, speaking of Tamika, I got to be in She Persisted at Bay Area Children's Theater with her probably the same year. That same year I did Detroit, Bay Area Children's Theater, and Town Hall.
Wow, really,
Yeah.
really, really cool. When you were studying, I'm always interested in technique and like, did you learn Stanislavski or in Meisner or any of those things, or not really?
Well, actually, I feel like Stanislavski is the core, right, of a lot of American theater techniques. So definitely was introduced to that and worked in that. But actually, I started to work in the Michael Chekhov acting technique, and it's what I specialize in actually. And so speaking of ACT, this summer, August 8th, I'll be teaching a masterclass in the Michael Chekhov acting technique, an intro masterclass. It's like a 3-hour, 1-day course amongst the other courses I teach for them. So the Michael Chekhov technique is one that I really connect with, and it's very movement based. And I think that because I'm a mover, and I really could connect deeply to that acting technique.
Can you give us a little preview? I mean, like, I don't know, a teaching preview of the Michael Chekhov. Obviously, we've heard of Anton Pavlovich Chekhov, but I've never heard of this Chekhov acting technique. What's it all about?
Yeah.
American. This is American.
Well, he worked with Stanislavski actually at Moscow Art Theater, and then he moved to the United States and started to work in Hollywood with a lot of stars like Marlon Brando and like a lot of people. So yeah, now it feels very American in how it's done. I would say that it's always hard to describe these things in just a quick way, but a lot of people know it through its psychological gestures, basically thinking about form. The form you create on stage will also connect you to the emotional, physical, living reality of a character. So it's about connecting with what the actions are that the character is expressing and putting physical form to that. There's a lot to it, but there's a lot of, I feel like that's one of the basic things that people think about, which is the psychological gesture. And it connects to kind of archetypal ways of moving through the world and taking action and pursuing what you want. If we talk about it in terms of a script, right? The characters pursuing what they want, they're going to pick an action, and it goes as deep as also looking at the quality of action that they take to make that. Where do they move from? Are they a person that moves from their head center, from their feeling center, from their will center, which is lower down? Thinking about atmosphere, thinking about how to exist within these characters with lightness and ease. And you do a lot of kind of like Meisner, where you repeat things many times in your body through these forms, so that it becomes part of your physical movement. And then you just stop, like you all were saying, you didn't just like let it go because it's in you. You know what I mean? Right. And then you're able to just express and allow the energy, we call it radiating out, to create what oftentimes people think as only some people got it, that thing, that charisma. What we really help people figure out how to radiate energy out into the space and become a fully embodied, integrated character that is needed for that moment. So it's really working with the energy within oneself is how I see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had two thoughts. I remember working on, well, the poster's there, but the camera's not pointed to it, but Fear and Misery in the Third Reich. And I worked with Susan Evans, the director, and I was part of East End's repertory company. And she used sort of I guess, the movement, like we had an exercise where we did repetitive movement. And, as actors, we may not have understood what the movement was. We had to create the movement, like, let's say, a hand gesture, and incorporate the lines and incorporate a character based on this repetitive movement. So it reminds me of that. But also the energy. You're absolutely right. Some people have a very kinetic energy and they can feed that into the character, and some people just really don't. I'm sure you've seen that, Norman, as a director, where there are different actors, especially students that you've worked with, some are, everyone has their own different energy, and I guess the objective is to.
Somebody described it as different intelligences once, and I wish I could remember what the whole list was, but the kinetic learner is huge. And Mara actually had a student recently who on Zoom is usually kind of checked out, and then they came back to school, and we do Tai Chi. So one day, just to kind of get the kids grounded, because they're outdoors, they're out in the parking lot, she's trying to run a class. So she just wanted to get them to quiet down and get grounded. And this one little girl was able to follow her through the beginning of the Tai Chi form. She's like, oh my God, she's always checked out when she's on Zoom, but bam. And so since then, she's been using that knowledge that if I tell, they were doing it because they also do a math study group, and the girl wasn't getting the problem. She said, if I told you you're going to take 8 steps back, 8 steps that way, and then 5 steps back, could you do that? And could you repeat that pattern? And she's like, oh yeah. So where would you be numerically if you did that 4 times? And the girl was able to just figure it out because that's in her body. She can do that.
Totally.
Yeah, when you recognize wherever an actor's strengths are, of course you want to lean into that.
Yep. And sometimes in our society, we are so thought heavy. We're so analytical. And so sometimes these, like Tai Chi, I also am currently studying neuroplasticity, which is like how our brain works. It's really interesting because it connects so deeply to acting. The acting exercises, warm-ups, they actually hit different nervous parts of our nervous system. And it makes sense when you look at it that way. But oftentimes in our culture, everything's eyes and thinking and how I could make this happen versus how I move with my body, how I connect to people. And I think that example, Norm, is right on. Like, I love that Tai Chi. I feel like Michael Chekhov also has the form and the movements that kind of, you start to practice them and you harness something within you that is focused, concentrated, in ease, and not strained, which sometimes happens on stage with folks. We start to strain and push. It also gives you good direction on like, oh, I know what could come next, because you're supposed to let it go and allow what is behind it to flow,
It's funny. Don't know where I was going with that now. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I'm sorry about that. And I was just going to say, you should let us know the details of this class, because it sounds like you can still sign up for,
and it's not that expensive. I think it's like, I don't know, $80-$90. You notice it's not like hundreds of dollars like some things out there. It's under $100. So
we'll definitely push it.
I
Because
remember what it was.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, we keep stumbling. My kids recently asked, so how do you do, like, one of the kids was like, how do you cry on stage? And I'm like, the thing I hate the most, when you said stress, that's what made me think about it. People start stressing about what they're doing. That's what the audience sees, is you stressing. And I said, so here, let me give you a simple exercise to do this so you can just feel it. And if you feel it, then you don't have to think about it at all. It'll just happen. And it's not about crying or not crying. It's about, what is that character actually experiencing? What are they feeling? Connect to that.
Yep. And some people don't cry. Like you could have all of it behind it and you have the audience crying, but a tear might not fall out of the actor's face.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Just,
Well, so the trick I gave him for that is, I said, just start saying to yourself out loud, start saying to yourself, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. And I said, just make it a mantra. Keep hearing it. Don't just make it empty, but keep hearing it, keep saying it, and see what happens. And inevitably, whenever I do that exercise with the group, there's a couple of people who are finding themselves in tears. I'm like, yeah. And the audience will be more engaged if you're committed to that than if you sit there and force out a tear.
Yeah, I remember doing at Civil War Christmas at the town hall, and there's a very last scene where I'm supposed to kill a soldier, and I don't want to do it. The soldier's a young child. As a matter of fact, Morgan Pavey played the child. And I had to cry, actually it's not in the script, but I think I just felt that the character needed that. And it's not so much, okay, you're going to cry here, but it's an action. Let's say, there's that wonderful story that you always tell, Norman, and I love repeating it. The actress that has to find a jewel on the
Oh,
stage.
that's Stanislavski. I mean, that's straight up Stanislavski.
Right, exactly. And it's about the action. It's about the action. It's not playing an emotion, but playing an action and an objective. And whether you achieve the objective or not, an emotion will come out if you're invested in the action, whatever the objective is. Whether it's finding something or pulling the trigger or not pulling the trigger, you know, you're told to do something, but you really don't want to do it. And there's the conflict that happens organically as a result of that. Yeah. So when you here, do you miss there? Are there parts of Detroit that you miss, Carolina?
I was in Detroit for about, I think, maybe a month, 2 months.
Oh, it
So
wasn't that long. Okay.
No, it was, I was in Oregon for longer, but what I love about Detroit, it was really a great community to step in, and I do want to go back and I do want to learn more. It was a lot of fun. It felt strange because of the amount of houses that were missing, you know, because of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of houses that are systematically burned down because they're abandoned. And there's been a whole thing that I can't describe it well, but there's been a whole thing that's happened with the changing of where people live. And like, there was this whole, they call in the 60s, I think, white flight, where all the white people went to the suburbs. And then now they're having kind of a reverse situation where the city center is starting to be gentrified, and the folks living in Detroit City proper have been over time, I think since the 2008 like bank situation, losing
the subprime loan crisis.
Yeah. So there was a lot of in a city, there was a lot of patches of areas where there used to be houses, but there was whole blocks with just trees now, or houses where a tree was growing out of it and it was in ruins around it. So it's a really interesting environment to be in, and also to see what is community doing to come together and save their neighborhoods. So yeah, that was my experience there. And we got to perform in a community area as well as in a downtown area. And it was a very cool experience.
Yeah, and we always hear about the Detroit and the car industry. You know, when that left, I think in the 70s, that's when sort of the city of Detroit, you know, it's been a very, very hard time them recuperating from that. And of course, if there are no jobs, there's not going to be any people. So
yeah, and they were losing more and more of it still, you know.
Yeah. You're also the booking manager at Piano Fight. How's working at Piano Fight?
Well, I love working with Piano Fight. It was the flight deck before, so I started when it was the flight deck.
Right.
And so I had just started there probably August of 2019, and I knew that they were thinking about releasing their lease or thinking about moving on. Probably in the next year. So it was a complete surprise and awesome to get to know the Piano Fight crew once they decided to take up the lease at the flight deck and make it Piano Fight Oakland. But it was also very strange because then we hit COVID right away.
Right.
So it was just.
I've been wondering if that has worked out or not, because that's been weird.
Yeah, they're still there. They're still holding on. Of course, they have Piano Fight San Francisco, and there's some few rentals happening in Oakland, so it is available. And actually, I'm transitioning out at the end of this month because I'll be working with SF Shakes and Pericles as an actor.
Oh yeah, what are you doing?
Yes, I'm playing a few different roles. I'm playing
Everybody
Thalyard.
is, right?
Yeah, I'm playing Thalyard and like Corrida. And I'm also the director of the pre-show. So I'm actually directing / performing. And so we start rehearsals in 2 weeks, June through September, as the run is. It's really interesting. It's going to be 3 virtual episodes, kind of like episodic TV show. And so those will be different parts of it. Instead of playing the whole play, it will be sections of the play. So there's episode 1, which is the beginning, 2, 3, and episode 4, which is the conclusion with Marina, will be a little longer than the 30-minute episodes of 1, 2, 3. And the last episode will be outdoors, live in person at different parks, the way SF Shakes traditionally does it. But it's later on in the fall, hopefully when more things are figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. I didn't even realize that Piano Fight was moving to Oakland.
Not moving, right?
Well, they're expanding. They're expanding. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an expansion. And yeah, I think that they're really still, you know, in it, and things are starting to open back up, and folks are starting to call up and book events, and there's, you know,
Hallelujah.
limited audiences, of course, but both spaces I think are in existence, surviving, thriving, and I think the guys there are excited to continue on after as everything reopens.
Yeah, I mean, their business model has done so much better than a lot of other theater companies, because usually we hear as gentrification has gone on, and especially COVID-19, theaters have crashed and gone down, but Piano Fight has gone way up, you know, just combining drinking and chilling out. And, you know, I guess after you get off of work, you can, you know, enjoy theater right
Yeah.
there in the middle, in the heart of the city, especially in San Francisco and now in Oakland. So Piano Fight, they're growing. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful home for comedians and for musicians that don't need the fanciness of a larger theater, that want to have more of a community restaurant drink feel about it. And so it's exciting.
Yeah. You know, one subject that I want to talk to you about, we've had a bunch of women on. They've talked about their experiences, either dealing with sexual harassment or just unpleasantness that may happen. Have you had any experiences like that at all, like during rehearsals, or, you know, being objectified as a woman? I don't know, as a dancer or as a director?
That's a good question. I think, you know, it's a challenging question too. I think that, you know, for me, I had my own challenges at, you know, growing up already. So by the time I got to theater, you know, as a survivor from a younger age, that wasn't something that was gonna hang with me. Like, wasn't
Yeah.
gonna be cool. I'm also from East Oakland, so like I had already experienced a lot of things in life that most people hadn't seen or experienced. So I think by the time I got to theater, I mean, someone would be hard pressed to mess with me in any kind of way, because I'm from East Oakland.
Yeah, I
Okay.
hear you.
But I think that the things that were harder to deal with is when you see how objectified our bodies can be. You know, sizeism. I've always been a thicker woman, more curvaceous. You know, what people consider you for, what they don't consider for you for, that starts to play in your brain, in your mind. Um, you know, what directors say to you about your race or skin color. I think those are the things that started to be internalized by my accent, because I have a Oakland regionalism, and like what they perceive that to be. What kind, you know, I had a director, a professor, you know, one time say to me like, oh yeah, the only companies you're going to probably work for are ethnic specific theater companies. Well, you know, at that time that was really heartbreaking, you know, because I was like, I want to work for everybody.
Right.
And it wasn't true. You know, coming out of the master's program, I ended up working for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for 6 seasons, you know, 6, 7 seasons.
Hey,
And it
hey.
just wasn't true. And they were like, why aren't more people of color coming to us? Why aren't? And I was like, because you have gatekeepers at the university telling you you're not wanted,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know?
that is an excellent point. And, you know, there were two things I had thought. We had Elizabeth Curtis on and Jessica Coker, also women of size, and they've talked about the exact same thing, you know, the sizism that happens in theater at a place that you would think, if there's any workplace that would be inclusive of people who are of different, you know, varieties, it would be theater. And
Yeah.
yet, you know, you
You
have
would
this
think.
yeah, you would think. But also, you know, just as you were talking about just the like dialects and things like that, one of the problems that I have with, let's say, Shakespeare or traditional Shakespeare or traditional, I guess, legit theater, is that everyone sort of sounds the same. It feels wonderful when you go into a theater and you hear different dialects, and it's like different, it's almost like music. You know, like
Yeah.
someone has a Latino accent, someone has, let's say, an Asian accent, Japanese or Filipino or whatever,
Yeah.
or someone has a Southern accent. And it's, you know, theaters have to understand. Oh, who's that? But
Sorry.
it's okay. But theater should understand that it adds a flavor to it. I think when we had Aurino Mario on, and she talked about seeing Hamilton for the first time and seeing people of different ethnicities approach, you know, colonial America. Um, but there are people from different ethnicities, and how she felt, wow, I'm being represented. I see myself on stage.
Yeah, for
And that's sort
sure.
of what you're talking about. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. And the dialect thing is really interesting in the sense of like, of course, it's important to learn how to speak, understand the way you speak, and how to change that if needed for a role or for a different, geographical setting. What often happens though is people start to be pushed into erasing who they are versus connecting to the sounds. And so another class I'm going to be teaching is called bilingual. Well, it's a Contemporary Latinx Scene Study class at ACT,
Sweet.
and it's bilingual. And I
right on,
created it
right
to be
on.
Spanish and English. And one of the aspects I really like to work with students on is what are the first sounds you remember hearing as a child? Can you
Hmm.
replicate those sounds? That's home. We don't erase home. That's where you
Right.
move from,
Yeah, because you're
That's
talking about
you.
assimilation. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. That's you. And what you could do with yourself, your body, your whole self as a storyteller, that could be, unlimited, right? You could take on a British accent. You could do whatever you want to do. Don't lose home.
Hmm.
Don't lose your essence, because that's what you're talking about, Reg. When you see everybody starting to sound look alike, and people go, oh, I can't compete against this because this is the same type as me. Oh, I'm like, forget about that. Guess what? You are you. You come from the only place you come from. No one else comes from that. And if you keep that as your essence, as the foundation of who you are, no one can mess with you. Maybe there's someone that looks almost exactly like you, or is the same type or same racial background, ethnic background, whatever, however they categorize, because we're often categorized.
Right.
You could stand firmly on, this is who I am. I'm gonna walk in knowing who I am, and I'm gonna rock it from that space. And that's where I try to come from with the way I teach and who I am.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And Norman, as a director, I mean, if usually you cast, I don't. How many times have you directed, but you don't select your cast? I think usually all the time you select your
No,
cast, right?
no. Oh no. There's lots of times when I don't select my class. And playground, I can have input, but I don't select the class. Um, a project I did, geez, at least 20 years ago, maybe longer. The Love Missile with Golden Thread Theater. They are going to do they're taking some of their original stuff and putting it online. So they just made an announcement about that. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to make sure I save the date. And what's great is they're putting it online and they're paying us. So how often does that happen?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but I was
But they're going to present that. And I came into that. I was the last hire on that project. They'd had a director drop out. And it turns out it's because there were 3 writers.
oh
So I
goodness.
kept having to work with these 3 writers on a new musical. But no, I'd say most of the time I can have some input into the casting. A lot of times I get none, and you deal with what you deal with.
Yeah, now as a director, because I'd asked you to, do you pay attention to, let's say, dialect, or do you listen to, I guess, the what I would call the flavor of dialect? When you're, if it's not casting, then just directing. I mean, do you pay attention to that, or is it really just the
Of course.
basics for? Yeah.
No, I mean that's who the character. It's that same thing of, and I've been told more than once by a director, "Oh, your character's not black," and I'm like, "Wow, the audience is going to have a hard time understanding that because this is what they're going to see."
Yeah.
When you put somebody on stage and they've got a dialect, they've got an accent, that's the character. And if you're a stupid director, you're going to ignore that as if the audience is. They're never going to ignore it. If you're a smart director, you're going to think about how does this affect what we're doing? And you can ask for some adjustments, but it's not adjustments asking the person to erase themselves. It's recognizing that's what they're bringing to the process.
Yeah. I used to beat myself up because I took all these speech classes, both in high school and also in college. Not to eliminate, I don't know if I ever had an accent or whatever, but it's very difficult sometimes for me to get cast as a black, as a stereotypical black man who, because I don't know, maybe I sound too proper or something like that. And it's almost the opposite of what you're talking about, Carolina. But really, you have to accept people for who they are, and the language and
Yeah.
the diversity, and even the physicality of who they are.
Yeah.
Why cast someone and then beat them up after you've cast them? It's like, well, you cast me, so why are you banging on me for being
Yeah,
who I am?
you knew who I was walking through the door, right? I think that also it is just like when we talk about Black, brown folks, oftentimes in this culture, this society, it's like we're not a monolith. It's not all the same.
Right.
Everybody's experience is different, coming from a different region sometimes, a different, even perspectives on being, right? Political policy, everything is just, and Latinx, there's so many different countries, so it's not even, it's not the same thing. You can't be like, oh, I want you to be a chola. The thing is that you set up the expectations as the actor walks in through the room. You see what kind of, like you said, you see what kind of play it is, you hear what kind of actor, you ask them, you make the adjustments, and then you decide if that person has the flavor you want that fits in with the essence of that character, right? Or if they could go in that. Me as an actor, I come in usually with two different types of styles. Like I could come in and I will clean it up, my language, my way of speaking, I could clean it up, but my essence will always be there. Or I could do something that has more of an accent, that sounds more like where I come from, has a little bit more dialect in it. And I have to, as an actor, adjust it to the what play I'm looking at and what they've asked from me. And I think that what you're talking about too is like that horrible experience a lot of people have of being told, you don't sound brown enough, you don't sound Black enough, you don't sound this enough, you
Yeah.
don't sound that enough. And it's just it's a horrible feeling. It's very stereotypical, and like Norm, like you said, it's not working with what you actually have. You're putting on something on top of somebody and not actually expressing what the essence of the character is. You know what I mean? It's not helpful. It's not getting anyone anywhere, versus like, let's look at where this character is from. Here is some dialect or some coaching around like what I want, what we want, what is necessary for this character, them being, for example, an August Wilson play from this time period with this experience, and we want to work with you to get to this kind of sound, right? Versus like, you're not this enough. It's just.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and you're saying your audience is pretty stupid if you're not going to acknowledge what you're putting in front of them. This is who you're putting in front of them. You better use it.
Yeah.
You can either reinforce stereotypes or you can break stereotypes. And I would think theater should be about breaking stereotypes. You can take a traditional story and throw something different. Like, when you did the Willie Loman thing, Death of a Salesman, having the Black neighbor, that was a breaking of a stereotype and it added a different flavor. I'm talking Norman when you played the neighbor. Yeah.
No, it totally changes the story. And yet it doesn't change the story. It changes the story for the audience. We're still working with the same text, and the relationships are informed, well, by who I am and who he is, but by the text, bringing what we can to the text.
Yep, that's exactly right. And we're hitting on the 1 hour mark. One last question for you, Carolina. Where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now? Are you happy in the Bay Area? Do you want to move on? Do you want to do film and theater? Do you want to do a YouTube thing? It sounds like you're doing a lot of teaching, so you may have some YouTube presentational, videos or whatever.
Yeah, well, interesting enough, I didn't talk about this yet, but I'm actually part of a cultural cooperative that we're forming called Oa-Kanda, kind of like Wakanda, but we call it Oakland. And it's culture makers, really, rooted in Oakland, artists, makers, healers. And what we're working on right now is to create a cooperative that is a resilience hub, as we're called Cultural Resilience Hub. And we're working towards real estate acquisition because we believe,
Damn, nice.
Yes, it's not enough. What's happening to our arts organizations, to the spaces we have, we're being pushed out, right? Like we were talking about. So we also are looking to cooperatively own property so that we can do the things we want and love to do in our community and not be pushed out to be other places. So I'm deeply rooted in that movement right now, which requires me to be as a producer, educator, theater actor. I also would love to continue doing more theater shows and some film stuff, of course. And I just have to balance it with this, with the work I'm doing in community and advocacy for the arts.
Yeah, I just pulled up well, I think it's Oa-Kanda. Welcome to Oakland, Wokeland, Oa-Kanda, a territory of fierce countercultural, progressive political movements and colorful streets. An unmissable part of the San Francisco Bay Area. The city is worth a visit if you, like me, often find yourself in an Angela Davis-inspired Afrocentric liberation kind of mood. I'll check this out and we'll post this. I think this is the
Well,
same.
I don't think that's the website, but
Oh,
yeah.
shucks. Okay.
That's why we had
Somebody
to
else.
switch up the way it was spelled, because there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of similar things, and I'll send you the link.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, someone else had the idea, but
Yeah.
I love the concept. It's like sort of taking out. And Norman, you were talking about this as far as Oakland and reclaiming the community. Instead of yelling about the community, add to the community and strengthen it and be.
Well, it's funny. So what I'm doing Monday is I'm on a panel for Playground. Gosh, and I will send you. I'll put all these links in the chat so you can get them.
Mhm.
What are they calling it? Playground and the American Theater Part 2. It's an ongoing discussion. And for me, I always want to bring it back. Like I said about Fat Ham, brilliant idea. Somebody did it somewhere. All they did was take Hamlet, take the talent base that they have and reconfigure it. Great, do that. And that's Bill. That's my big thing is I think we can appreciate more the talent base that we have here. Not appreciate, I think they get some appreciation, utilize them, see them as a positive thing that we can put out to an audience. Because if somebody came and saw the show 2 years ago and you say, oh, that actor's gonna be in this show, the people who saw that show, I get people talking to me about shows that happened 20 years ago. I remember that show. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember it too. I was in it. But I think there's an appreciation of that in our audience base. And I don't know that enough of our theater takes advantage of that. So that's whenever I get asked to be in one of these conversations, that's where I'm always going is, how can we more appreciate who's here, who's part of the conversation?
Yeah. And I think that the structure, the structure of white supremacy and how that works within the nonprofit structure has been very detrimental, like really destructive to the arts movements, And I think that finding a new way, finding a new structure altogether is also important, within talking about how we transform the structures that exist. Sometimes we also just have to reinvent, create, and make a new thing altogether too. And they both can exist.
Yeah, it's enlightening because I think about Washington, D.C. When I go back to D.C., it's totally different. It's not the neighborhood that I remember anymore because people have left. And you have two choices. You can leave your community or you can stay in your community and try to work to still make it your own home. And it's comforting to know that, you're rooted in Oakland. You're an Oakland girl and Oakland woman, and you're not going to be pushed away by gentrification or how things change. You're going to, contribute to make it your own.
Yeah, it's not easy because it's really a challenge, and the pressures are present. But we're making a stand and an effort.
Right on, right on. And with that, let's do shout outs, birthdays.
Not a big list this week. Hallelujah. And I'm going to skip some because I think you may have them. Roy Comboy, I believe he's retired now, but he was teaching at San Francisco State. And he came in as I was going out as a playwright and a Latino playwright. So I was like, oh, how cool. Bye. I got to go. But we've always kept in touch and sort of watched each other's careers over the years. Manu Mukasa and it took me forever to find out how we first connected. It was through the Bay Area Playwrights Festival. We did Blackballing, which eventually Oakland Public Theater, my company, produced with him as the director. So that was how I met him. And then he did a number of things. He was running the department at Laney before Michael Torres was there. Yeah, wonderful. And we did a bunch of Ato Fugard pieces with another company, Second Wind. So I've loved him, loved working with him. Kenny Moscow, Ken, he goes by now, is somebody else from my college days. And I loved him in college. He was a wonderful actor, great sense of humor. And he looked a lot like a young what's his name from Die Hard?
Bruce Willis.
Yeah, he looked like a moonlighting Bruce
Oh,
Willis.
yeah. With the little
You know, I was like, dude, you got to go out now. You can get a career right now. Nigel Berkeley is somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum, a young playwright that I've gotten to work with a couple of times now. Did one of his readings maybe 2 months ago. He's, to me, when I'm looking at young people and what they're creating, there are these people who take those simple forms like the fairy tale that we all know and then reconfigure it in a very contemporary way that holds onto that innocence and that joy, that recognition that we have for the form, but makes it relate more to where we are and who we are. And he does it in a really positive way. I'm like, dude, it's not like he's not dealing with adult themes, but he has this sort of hope. Anyway, this is a young playwright I'm hoping we will hear more from. And then the last one is actually somebody who's passed on, but his birthday is coming up this week. Stephen
Randolph. Yeah.
I loved him, and he's the guy who introduced me to karaoke. So I will love him forever for that, and my wife will never forgive him.
Yeah, Stephen Randolph. I still remember we were at Nations on 2nd and Broadway, and that was the last time I saw him. And he was still very just upbeat.
Urbane. He just had a nice energy around him. But at the same time, the man worked with his hands. So he was staying in a house in San Francisco, and he actually, I didn't know you could do this, broke up the sidewalk. I didn't even know there was a tool for it. This big, heavy iron thing. You break up the sidewalk, you grade it, and then you pour concrete. I was like, damn, I didn't even know that was something you could do.
Wow, man. Who's
anyway,
the late great Stephen Randolph. Also, well, today, I'm sure you left this for me. Jeffrey Lowe, his birthday is today. A creative Filipino
director,
writer
too, I think. Yeah,
exactly. Also today, Shay Troja. I remember working with her. We did. Oh shucks, Debbie Does Dallas the musical, and that, as a matter of fact, the poster is right there at the distance there. In any case, her birthday is today. Also, Ben Prince, someone who has worked with Ray of Light Theater for a while. He's a musical director, brilliant pianist. So his birthday is today. Let's see. Dan Weiss. I'm trying to remember where do I remember Dan Weiss from, but in any case, his birthday will be on May the 24th. May the 26th, Diana Blanda. She and I worked on the Texas Chainsaw Musical. She's a talented actress. Also, May the 26th, Kehinde Kehoyo, who is a native of Oakland, and she has a little business in Oakland. She and I worked on Bat Boy, the musical. Brilliant actress. Do you know?
Kehinde. Yeah.
Yes.
You all should order up some of her cookies. She has the most amazing cookies, part of Calm Corner Collective, her company, and she makes these fabulous vegan chocolate chip, pecan, a variety of different nuts that can be chosen from. They're delicious and amazing.
Yeah, I've talked about her on the other podcast that I have, Black in the Bay, and I'm trying desperately to get her on because I know she's not part of the theater community anymore, but she was. So in any case, Kehinde, her birthday is May the 26th. Carmelo Tringali, who I worked with, we did Candide, a brilliant singer, not much of an actor, but he's a brilliant singer, an operatic singer, and a guitarist, matter of fact, a Spanish guitarist. Brilliant, very talented guy. His birthday is May the 27th. And on May the 28th, I've talked about him before, a mentor of mine, Ernesto Mercer. When I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts as a very thin 14-year-old kid, there was a senior, an upperclassman who everyone talked about, and he sort of had me under his wing. And Ernest, he was known as Ernest back then, but he is sort of a griot, sort of an African storyteller, and I celebrate him. His birthday is May the 28th. Is that it? Two more. Actually, three more. Werner Von Gough, another Filipino ex-Bindlestiffer. I don't think he's ex-Bindlestiff. I think he's still with the Bindlestiff Theater Company.
I hope.
He's a builder. So he's not only an actor and a director, but he also is sort of the master technician there. His birthday is May the 28th. Also May the 28th, Adiola Roll, a gifted Black actress and model. We worked together on, I think it was the very last EastEnders thing I did on stage, which was Pride Open.
Huh.
And the last person is Soila Hughes, who also worked on Bat Boy. She's a brilliant Latina actress and singer. And that is it. Those are the stories those are the birthdays that I have.
We're gonna
Shows.
have to get you set up again so that all your posters are like right behind you, because you're always saying, "There's this poster, there's that poster."
Oh yeah, I didn't want it junked up. I think the last setup I had, it looked a little messy. But in any case,
Oh, I liked that wall. It was like a wall of honor.
yeah,
Carolina, any
exactly.
shout outs you want to give?
No, I don't think I have any shout outs. I appreciate all the ones you have mentioned just now.
Yeah. What about shows? I know we're going to talk about Playground.
I just put a big list in the comments so you can save that, Reg, and you'll have it. So I did the Fat Ham thing just because it's an amazing thing. And so it came out of a play created by the Wilma Theater company. And then Oakland Theater Project has Begin the Begin, which is Don Troop as directing, and that starts next weekend. Sapiens by Diana Burbano, I believe directing and writing.
Katya Rivera is directing the show, I think. Yeah.
Oh, who is?
Katya Rivera.
Oh, Katya's directing. Yay. Oh, you've got that one. Great. So you have the link for that because I messed up the link there. And then I'm got a few things I'm doing. I'm going to be on this panel on Monday, so that'll be 7:00. And there's a link. It's through Playground. The
Playground Zoom Hall. Playground in the American Theater, Part 2.
Yep. And then I'm directing a piece called Sasha and the Angelier. That's part of Playground, Best of Playground, which is next weekend. Which is going to make next weekend very long. From the time we do our podcast through other rehearsals that I have to do, it's going to be a long day. And then Afro Solo is doing Afro Solo has been around forever, doing what was originally a solo performance festival and has grown over the decades into an arts festival. But they are going back to their roots with this solo performance, but on Zoom. And this is, there's two programs. Program 1 starts June 9th. And it's Black men embracing our light. So it's 4 Black men telling their stories of their interactions with the police. Obviously, none of them got killed, but that didn't mean it was a good story. And I directed one by Vernon Medeiros, My Story. And so that'll be a part of that. And then his program 2 starts June 17th. And it's Thomas has a character that he has created and done solo pieces with over the years. And this is the latest iteration of that. And it's called, I think, Courage Under Fire. And then June 6th, I will be doing a Q&A with Play Cafe. You wrote your play, meet your director. And they'll talk about the role of the director in working with playwrights. So Play Cafe is a wonderful organization that supports up and coming writers who are just starting to get their feet wet. And then the last one comes from one of our birthday boys from last week, Rob Melroy's, who is at the Alley Theater. And he says right now, all of their stuff is online and available for free. So I'm adding that link in.
Okay. Let's see. I have most of yours. Best of Playground. You wrote your play, meet your director. Shakespod. Titus Andronicus and Richard III. We've talked about that. That'll be June the 26th. Alan Coyne is Demetrius. And that'll be cool. Richard III, they're doing that next. Lamont Rogel and Cynthia Lagodzinski is doing that. That'll be actually much later in August. We've talked about Sapiens. Shoot Me When by Ruben Grijalva. I believe this it's streaming now until May the 27th on sfplayhouse.org. Also, Letitia Duarte is directing Occupant by Edward Albee, Too Soon Old Productions. They actually begins this weekend, only 2 weekends, and they don't have a website, but you can email to get a ticket. And I think that is it. And we've talked about quickfire monologues. If you're an actor, and I think they're looking for actors to do spontaneous monologues. And they posted it on Facebook. Alan Coyne has done a bunch of them. I think you did one, didn't you, Norman?
I did one. Luel Sonoris has done a bunch. He and Alan are seem to be in competition for who can do the most.
So if you want to be involved in Quickfire Monologues, email quickfiremonologues@gmail.com and we'll have that link. That is it. Carolina, I want to, now you have a couple of, you're teaching a couple of classes. So
Yeah.
we'll post those, but did you want to talk about that?
Mainly it's teaching. I'm teaching acting 3 coming up. That's the first one, Studio ACT, and that starts the second week of June. It's once a week. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited about it. Then the next one up is the Latinx Contemporary Latino Scene Study, and that's bilingual Spanish-English. Great opportunity to practice in both languages, and it's great as well. We do a lot of voice work in that. And then the last one, of course, go ahead.
I'm sorry, is that also ACT?
It is. All
Great.
3 of these are ACT. And then the one I mentioned, which was August 8th, it's a Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m. in person, Gary Theater, masterclass intro to Michael Chekhov acting technique. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, San Francisco Shakes. We're going to start episode 1 of Pericles. Will be towards the end of June, I think June 25th or something like that. So we'll start rolling on that.
Yeah, and if you email me or text me the links, and we can put it on there so that folks can if they want to sign up to watch it or see Pericles or be involved in the acting courses. That I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Carolina,
And
did
then,
you enjoy?
is Neighborhood Stories done?
Oh,
Or do
you
they
know
have
what?
one this weekend?
I think they do have one this weekend. It ends May the 30th, and Yubi Kabori and Sherry Lynn Miller are performing. So we'll have that neighborhood-stories.com. So I'll have that link as well.
Great.
Carolina, did you enjoy yourself today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You all are so fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much. And I was dying to have you on. I was like, hey, let me grab her. So cool. I'm glad that it all worked out. And many of you may be watching this on YouTube. If you are, please like and subscribe. Our YouTube audience is growing, so this may be a thing we'll be doing even after COVID-19. We'll see. But please like and subscribe and let us know what you think, even if you like it or don't like it, on our comments section. If you're listening to this on the traditional podcast app, we're on all podcast apps and we're on Spotify. So if you have a iPhone or an iPad, we're on that purple podcast app. You can find us. If you're an Android user, you can use the SoundCloud app, or just go on soundcloud.com and find us. The Yay was created by theater people for theater people. If you have a show you want to advertise, or if you just want to advertise yourself, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Reg Space Clay.
And I'm at Who's Your Hoosier.
And Caroline, I think you are on Instagram, Caro with a 0, Lina Moro. And Twitter, you are Caro_Moronis.
Yes, I'm more active on Instagram and Facebook than I am on Twitter. But yeah, you can find me on those social media.
Yay.
Right on. So if you're looking for a dancer and actress, I think you're also a singer. I when we sang on Women on the Verge, you were a great singer too. So
thank you. Thank you. And I miss hearing you sing jazz.
Oh yeah. That was my little ritual before the show.
Warm up.
My warm up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And for folks, if you're looking for an instructor, a teacher, I think are you looking to be? Can people hire you as a teacher, Carolina?
Yeah, we could definitely. I mean, they could reach out to me through email or through these, Instagram or Facebook. I haven't been doing a lot of individual coaching. It's been mostly focused in classwork.
Right.
But that doesn't mean folks, my students, they always still hit me up after class, even if a semester has ended and, we do individual coaching. So folks can always reach out to me.
Right on. Well, that's the sign of a good teacher when they reach out to you afterwards. You're doing a good job. All righty. Well, it's a wonderful Saturday. So everyone head on out there and thank you so much. And as Norman and I always say, we gotta find
a better sign off.
And we are out.